Yo, while America's long-awaited strategic Bitcoin reserve was a disappointment so far, their newest announcement could be an absolute game changer. The world's largest nation in terms of GDP and military might hasn't had a sovereign wealth fund until now. But I think the real question on everyone's mind is what's going to be going into the sovereign wealth fund. Will America copy the multiple sovereign wealth funds that around the world that already have exposure to Bitcoin? Well, we'll talk about it because it's very interesting who is in charge of the sovereign wealth fund, who's behind it, and what's also really interesting as well is the Bitcoin senator retweeted about it. So some little hints there. Anyways, guys, before we dive into the topic, let's check out the clip.
Next, this is an executive order. Discharges your Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, and your Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, to begin a process that will hopefully result in the creation of an American sovereign wealth fund.
It's a very exciting event. We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, which we've never had. We have a lot of things that create wealth, and you're seeing that over the last 2 weeks. I think we've created more wealth. Other people have created de-wealth, the people, my predecessors. We're creating a lot of wealth. Scott, maybe you'd like to say something about it, and I'd ask also Howard to say something about it.
Yes, sir. This is very exciting. We're going to stand this thing up within the next 12 months. We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people. We're going to put the assets to work, and I think it's going to be very exciting. We're going to study best practices as done around the world. It'll be a combination of liquid assets, assets that we have in this country as we work to bring them out for the American people.
The extraordinary size and scale of the U.S. government and the business it does with companies should create value for American citizens. If we are going to buy 2 billion COVID vaccines, maybe we should have some warrants and some equity in these companies and have that grow for the help of the American people. So I bring all these things together, I think we'll create, Scott and I will create an amazing sovereign wealth fund for you, sir.
So other countries.
So it's really interesting stuff. Now let's dive into some of the details, and then of course we'll tie in the Bitcoin component to it because I see some people like in the chat. I know you guys are tuning in to Simply Bitcoin. You're like, what does this have to do with Bitcoin? Well, I'll get to it, and I'll actually make a very strong case as to why there's probably a very high probability that Bitcoin is included in this sovereign wealth fund that the United States government is including. Now, who was next to Trump during that speech is Howard Lutnick. Now, Howard Lutnick, I think he was appointed head of commerce, and he actually manages the money for Tether in the United States, number one. And number two, he was actually on Anthony Pompliano's podcast not too long ago. And Pomp essentially asked him point blank, like, look, like, what's the deal with Bitcoin? And all he could say was just very, very positive things. But before we dive into that clip, I do want to read some of this article. So it says, Trump signs order establishing a sovereign wealth fund that he says could buy TikTok. Moving on, sovereign wealth funds betting on crypto. Who's buying Bitcoin and crypto stocks? It goes on to say, the key takeaways, sovereign wealth funds worldwide are ramping up investments in cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. Several funds hold indirect Bitcoin exposure through investments in companies like MicroStrategy. The U.S. may follow suit as President Donald Trump has signed an executive order to establish a sovereign wealth fund. So here is the Bitcoin senator, Senator Cynthia Lummis, and she says this is a big deal. The B in that big deal is the Bitcoin B, and it's a picture, of course, of President Trump and the two members that were next to him during the press conference video that we played for you guys. And to his right-hand side, again, is Howard Lutnick. He's the CEO and chairman of Counter Fitzgerald. They manage all of Tether's money currently. So obviously, Tether loves Bitcoin. They have a very positive Bitcoin they have a positive relationship with the Bitcoin ecosystem. I was just in their conference in El Salvador. It was absolutely amazing. The Plan B Forum, which they also do in Switzerland, in Lugano. So yeah, I mean, you guys can connect the dots here, obviously. But what's really interesting about Mr. Lupnick is he actually went on Pomp's podcast not too long ago, and I think Pomp asked him point blank about Bitcoin, and he said some interesting things. So let's check that out.
Before I let you go, how rich are you? And how much of your net worth is in Bitcoin? Because if I don't ask you, everyone will be really mad at me.
If you took my stake in my public companies, which is public, and you did the public math, you'd see a couple of $1 billion.
Okay.
Okay. And then at least a couple of $1 billion. And then you'd have, what's Cantor worth? Yeah, I'm not saying. Okay. But things are good for me. How about that? Is that a nice way to say it? Since Cantor owns the stakes in the other companies, it's good for me. So, and I have
like the percentage. You don't have to say exact number, but like, how do you think about either you or Cantor?
I don't have a big enough percentage. I probably have, I can't say because then people can figure out that no, how much I have. I would say I have hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay.
Okay. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Exposure to Bitcoin. And it will be billions.
I was going to say, so next year when you come back and we'll do this again and you'll be a Bitcoin billionaire and,
but you remember that model I told you. So if every time Bitcoin dips, I'm going to be the buyer. Right?
Trust me, I know why you're doing the lending.
It's all coming. You're figuring it out.
Listen, you don't have to explain that one around here.
So I got the 50% Bitcoin. I got the Bitcoin lending. But basically, what you're going to see is Cantor Fitzgerald is going to be the sponsor of Bitcoin into traditional finance.
Mm-hmm.
And so we will be the leader of it. And I'll pull out this podcast in years to come and say, see, I told you, because no one's going to remember.
Of course.
Right? But all the banks, after we do it, and show people how to do it right, they'll all copy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the asset of Bitcoin will just, as it becomes more accepted, it will become more valuable. And the whole Bitcoin nation should just call it a commodity, never a currency.
Mm-hmm.
Just call it a commodity. Because if it's a currency, you're attacking the politicians of the country,
mm-hmm.
right? You're trying to replace my currency with yours.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say, hey, I'm just oil, I'm just gold.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a commodity. Leave me be, right? Then they'll leave you be.
So I'll leave it at that, right? The last part, of course, I have some thoughts on, but the first part, he's telling you, look, he owns hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin. Again, he manages the money for Tether in the United States. And he was literally in a press conference with President Trump to his right announcing a sovereign wealth fund. Now, it's not rocket science. And then not to mention, of course, Senator Lummis basically saying the quiet part out loud when she says this is a big deal with the giant B as the Bitcoin symbol. So you can't really say we're speculating at this point. Look, no one's better than their incentives fundamentally. And when you have, this gentleman basically admitting he owns hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoin, and Pomp is basically saying you're going to be a Bitcoin billionaire. It's not a stretch to say that, there's going to be Bitcoin on this sovereign wealth fund for the United States. Now, what is like the implications of that from a price perspective? Well, I mean, it's basically a rubber stamp of approval by the U.S. government, basically saying, you know what? This Bitcoin thing is legit. It's so legit that we have exposure to this Bitcoin thing. And you can't really say that the people who are running the sovereign wealth fund are enemies of Bitcoin and they're not benefiting from Bitcoin. And it's the thing that we've been saying for the last couple of days. We know the vice president has Bitcoin. We know the president has Bitcoin, according to a video from Sailor's 100K party with David Bailey, where David Bailey basically says, I know Trump owns a lot of Bitcoin. We know RFK Jr., he said at the Nashville Bitcoin conference, he said something along the lines of like, look, the majority of my assets are in Bitcoin. So, I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, who, you know, it looks like from the prediction markets is going to be approved. She spoke at a Bitcoin conference. I think it was 22 or 23. So, I mean, it's not rocket science. And I think no one is better than their incentives. And if you are in a certain position, like, like it's human nature in order to want to pump your bags, right? But that sounds bad when you say it that way. It's the awesome part about Bitcoin. It's aligned incentives. So, you know, by Michael Saylor pumping his bags, by Larry Fink pumping his bags, anyone else who owns Bitcoin, they get their bags pumped by, you know, these huge people, extremely influential. And that's why that's why Max Kaiser came up with the term, you know, Saylor's the Bitcoin employee of the year. Well, you know, of the month. Well, you know what? I'm officially awarding the Bitcoin Employee of the Year to the month of February to Howard Lupnick, because I think that more than likely he is going to include Bitcoin in the sovereign and in the U.S. sovereign wealth fund. You heard him say it on Palm's podcast. He's like, I own hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin. I'm probably going to buy more. And there he is in the president's office talking about a sovereign wealth fund. And then all the other countries in the world, in their sovereign wealth funds, they have exposure to Bitcoin. So where do you think this is going? And what do you think happens when in the highlight or in the news segment, it says U.S. sovereign wealth funds own Bitcoin? What do you think is going to happen to the price? Like, all of this is not speculative. It's just common sense. Sometimes we come up with theories that are very speculative. Like, you can say, like, Nico, like, that's crazy. Like, sometimes we do go out on a whim. But this time, like, this is just pure common sense. TLDR, United States announces a sovereign wealth fund. More than likely, Bitcoin will be included in that sovereign wealth fund if you connect the dots. Anyways, Opti, I mean, we go out on a stretch sometimes, bro, but not this time. Like, it is when the Bitcoin Senator Cynthia Lummis, is saying this is a big deal with the Bitcoin B. I mean, bro, bro. And then of course we have John from the Medellin conference, and we're gonna get his thoughts. But Opti, what do you think, brother?
Well, first of all, just kind of touching on the sovereign wealth fund, just in itself, an announcement of that in the U.S., I think is a big deal. Obviously, the U.S. doesn't have a sovereign wealth fund right now, and we've seen how impressive that's been for a lot of countries in the Middle East. You know, I think everyone knows about like Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund or the Arab Emirates sovereign wealth fund. And so, you know, on one hand, it does seem like we are, you know, financializing the U.S. government. And for some people, that might be a scary word, because you know, it usually starts with an F and people get scared over there. And but personally, I think if you play that clip, you know, the announcement with Trump, there was some interesting things in there. First one was Scott Bessent essentially saying that we're going to use some of our liquid assets. It's going to be interesting to see what of the assets that are on the U.S. balance sheets actually make it into that sovereign wealth fund. And at the very end of that clip, we didn't get to it today, but you guys can watch it. There was a point where Trump was kind of talking about what's going to go in. He kind of mentions his TikTok a little bit. And right when the clip would shut off, he says something like, there's a lot of other assets that we can put into the sovereign wealth fund. And that's where a lot of us Bitcoiners are thinking that that's most likely where Bitcoin's going to fall into. Obviously, as a Bitcoiner, we think that Bitcoin is the only sovereign wealth in the world, period. So obviously it would go into a sovereign wealth fund. Now, for people that are thinking that we're kind of just speculating here, this is already happening. This isn't just, you know, some speculation by Bitcoiners that, oh, you know, a sovereign wealth fund is going to add Bitcoin. This is already happening for, say, like in Norway. This has already happened in Singapore. This has happened. The United Arab Emirates, this has happened. Saudi Arabia, this has happened. And even in Canada. So this is already a thing that has been happening and has been occurring in the last couple of years. So I don't think it's too big of a stretch to say that this sovereign wealth fund from the U.S.
It's not a stretch, bro.
Yeah,
it's not a stretch. It would be a stretch if we talked about this like a year ago or 2 years ago. Be like, Nico and Opti, they're just talking shit again. No, this is not. Look, just like, okay, I have to. I'm sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to repeat myself because, you know, I can't even believe this. Okay, the Bitcoin Center says this is a big deal with the giant Bitcoin B. this is the dude on his right, and we just played you a clip of him saying, like, you know what, I'm extremely wealthy and I own an F ton of Bitcoin. Like, come on now. Like, it's not a stretch, Opti. It's not a stretch at all. Anyways, I do want to welcome on the show today. We got John in the house. John is the organizer of the Bitcoin Medellin conference. I've heard so many good things about the conference from friends that were there. So, John, welcome to the show, first off. And second off, what do you think? Is this I don't think. Look, there's speculation, and then there's the category next to speculation, which is like basically like, look, all things are pointing. There's speculation, then there's common sense. This definitely falls like solidly in the common sense, category if you just put all the pieces together. And I think and a U.S. senator agrees with that opinion as well. So, John, what are your thoughts on this? How positive is this? I think from a number go up perspective, as soon as that hits headlines, we might get Samsung's Omega candle, which is 100K in one day. So what's your perspective, John? Welcome to the show.
Yeah, no, appreciate you guys having me on. Opti, Nico, really appreciate it. And, very grateful to be here and to be on with you guys and to be on this amazing show. So, no, like this is a done deal. It's common sense. I mean, this is not speculating. I mean, it's 100% happening. I mean, Howard Lutnick, came to Bitcoin in Nashville and essentially said the same thing he said in this thing. He's worth a shit ton of. He has a shit ton of Bitcoin, and of course, they're going to want to pump their own bag. So of course, they're going to put Bitcoin into this sovereign wealth fund. I don't think that's a stretch at all.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree with you, and it's not a stretch. Like is what I gotta say. Also, shout out to the 700 of you guys watching live on YouTube. Today's a good show, and shout out to the Rumble audience. We're about to break 400 live viewers on Rumble. Shout out to all you guys, and almost 2,000 live viewers on X. If you guys are enjoying Simply Bitcoin Live, make sure to smash that like button. We have a hell of a show for you guys lined up, and I'm happy to be back, bro, because I've been gone for like 5 days. I filmed a podcast on top of a volcano. It was absolutely ridiculous. You guys are going to love it. The footage looked epic. I was at the Plan B forum in El Salvador. I did 2 days of podcast. I did 2 days of 5-hour interviews each, just back to back in Spanish. It was crazy. It was nuts, but it was an incredible conference. So shout out to the Plan B guys. Anyways, Opti, what are you going to say?
Yeah. No, you said in the private chat here, make a poll, but I'm going to do it in the chat. So 1 in the chat if you think a sovereign wealth fund is going to add Bitcoin. 2 if you don't. Let's see what people are saying. I think that's more effective than a poll, Nico. So anyways, keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, before we jump into the show, of course, you guys know the deal. So Bitcoin is powered by our amazing partners. And of course, our lead partner is Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is by far the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack. To get started, scan the QR code or go to bitcoinwell.com/simply. What makes Bitcoin Well different? Because I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. Like, this is just another Bitcoin on-ramp, Nico, what the F? No. What makes Bitcoin Well different and why we highly recommend it is that it's self-custody by default. It's a non-custodial on-ramp. What does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address. It doesn't even give you the ability to leave the Bitcoin on the exchange, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos because self-custody is the revolution. If you're a higher net worth individual, check out their Bitcoin Well Infinite product. It's a Bitcoin OTC desk. So if you're a higher net worth individual looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, and you're tired of dealing with Coinbase UI, you're tired of dealing with the support emails that take 2.5 weeks to get back to you, and you want a real human being every time you want to buy or sell, or you have any questions about Bitcoin, you have to check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. Go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC to get started. It's an absolutely amazing product, and I highly recommend it. Also, if you're trying to get paid in Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite just announced that Americans can now get paid in Bitcoin sent directly to their personal Bitcoin wallet. Share your Bitcoin Well direct deposit details with your employer, set your Bitcoin/dollar split, and receive sats instead of fiat with every paycheck. That's right. You can get now paid in Bitcoin. Guys, get started. Go to bitcoinwell.com today and enable your independence, baby. All right, everybody, let's get some numbers. We have tons to talk about. Let's check it out.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store.
All right, everybody, scan the QR code on your screen right now. It'll take you directly to the Stamp Seed website. Use promo code SIMPLY, get 15% off. Stamp your seed words into titanium. Don't write down your seed words on paper. Don't do that. Don't put yourself in that position. Stampseed.com, promo code SIMPLY, 15% off anything on the store. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is, before I get to that, we're at 168 likes on YouTube. Make sure to smash that like button. Help us break 250 likes within the first 30 minutes of the show. And shout out to this amazing audience today. We love you guys. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $99,250. Block height, 882,310. Sats per dollar, over 1,000. We're at 1,007. Market cap, 1.97 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 9.92%. Percentage issued, 94.37%. Decline from all-time high, -9%. That's right. You have a 9% discount at the moment. Realized monetary inflation continuing to take fiat currencies to absolute school. We're currently sitting pretty at 1.02%. Anyways, guys, I want to talk about this. Bitcoin is going mainstream. I think you guys all feel it. We have the first pro-Bitcoin president in the White House. We had Ross Ulbricht-Fried. We're talking about a strategic Bitcoin reserve. There's talks about it. We're talking about Bitcoin going into the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund. You have mainstream figures going to Bitcoin conferences. You have Russell Brand talking about it, right? I mean, come on now. You have Tim Pool with a huge mainstream audience talking about look, I own Bitcoin. I mean, this is going mainstream. I think we all see it. I've been predicting it. I think 2025, as the bull market continues to accelerate from here, as much as it doesn't look like it, I think 2025 is going to end explosively. This is the year after the halving from a historical context. This is the year that Bitcoin always outperforms. I think this year is going to be no different. I'm getting into speculation territory, but that's my personal opinion. Stay humble, stack sats. This isn't investment advice. But I think this is the year that Bitcoin goes mainstream, because I think that if we see, 200 or 300 or 400K Bitcoin, that's a lot of people that are going to be looking at Bitcoin. They're going to saying oh my God, maybe I should buy some just in case it catches on. And you now have governments saying this. You now have central banks saying this, right? So I think you can make a very solid case that Bitcoin is going mainstream. Now, here is, and according to Opti, this guy is famous, and I
Shane
think he's
Gillis is hilarious. He's a huge comedian. He's hilarious.
Too. He's a massive following, Shane Gillis, and here he is talking about Bitcoin on his podcast. And again, you have to understand that most of society is currently going through this process in their minds, right? They're not Bitcoin maxis. They don't care about sovereignty. They don't care about self-custody. But we always make the case on simply all roads lead to Bitcoin. Why? Because it's the best money the world has ever seen. Like saying you don't use Bitcoin is like, it's saying like you don't use Bitcoin is saying that you don't use the internet in 1999 or 2000. I get it. The internet sucked ass back then. It was not good. There was no YouTube. The UI wasn't that great. I understand it. You can make a very solid argument for that. I get it. But not using Bitcoin in 15 years or in 10 years is going to be saying like, I don't use the internet in the year 2025. If you don't use the internet in the year 2025, something is wrong with you, or you live in the middle of the, Amazon or something like that. And that's cool. I would say the world needs to be unplugged a little bit more in terms of people being off their phones and, like enjoying nature. I remember seeing this video of all these people partying in Ibiza, and it was like partying in Ibiza in the 2000s, and everyone's just enjoying the moment and just having a good time and just vibing to the music. And then it was like partying in Ibiza in 2025, and everyone just has their phone and they're just recording a video of the DJ. So like, you can make an argument that like, people got to enjoy life a little bit more. But the case that I'm trying to make is that the internet is completely intertwined with people's lives today. And I think that by the end of the decade, definitely by the end of the next 2 decades, Bitcoin is going to be intertwined with people's lives, and it's going to be the money that people choose to use because it is better money. So anyways, here's Shane and Matt writes, and they're talking about Bitcoin. I don't know if we're going to be able to play the entire clip, but let's check it out.
I did Marty Bent's podcast on Bitcoin.
Nice.
Yesterday. So the same experience.
I've never understood a thing about Bitcoin.
I'm a little bit clear.
I don't know what it is.
It's a technology. It's like one of the greatest technologies man's ever done.
I can do that. I can do that.
So, dude, he was explaining it yesterday.
How do they mine it? What is being mined? What is happening?
So this is my understanding of
Somebody tell me.
This is my hard-earned, and I don't know if this is even correct, but so there's like a computer network that is somehow securing Bitcoin by solving this like mathematical equation the founder set out to where like it increases in difficulty. So if like a lot of Bitcoins are being mined, you're mining a Bitcoin, you're being rewarded for dedicating computing power that then like secures the network itself, which is just this like weird mathematical function that can be like solved, and then for solving it, you get a little Bitcoin as a reward. But then it like the network knows the problem's being solved, so it ups.
Okay, so I'm going to just have that playing in the background while we talk about this. This is the conversation, right, that the majority of society is currently having. Okay, they don't really know. Like, I mean, he's doing actually a really good job at explaining it, in my opinion. But this is what society is going through. This is what people have to understand. Like, this is where we are in the movie. This is where we are in history. It's extremely exciting for Bitcoin holders, and I think this is where we are. And you could say, Nico, you're wrong. This is not where we are. I don't know what you're talking about. I think this is where we are. Like, my humble opinion. And I remember who I forget who was telling me this. Wow. Was it? It was Samson, and it was on top of a volcano, but he was telling me this. He's like, Nico, if you just like point at someone on the sidewalk randomly, what's the probability that they're into Bitcoin? It's probably really low. But I think the probability of the people around you, more than likely, they know what Bitcoin is. They've heard about it. Right. But the probability that they know about the benefits of Bitcoin and they know whatever, we're still super early, but I think we're on the verge of that S-curve acceleration where it just starts to go like, whoop, like a straight line up. I think we're on the verge of that just because of the U.S. government stance on it. Like, of course, Nayib Bukele, El Salvador, the nation state adoption, the institutional adoption, Michael Saylor, Wall Street, all the banks looking at it, the repeal of SAB 121, the end of Operation Choke Point 2.0. I mean, like, I think we're on the verge of what we do, Bitcoin, the ethos of Bitcoin being used as money going mainstream. I really believe that. I think we went through as a society, like essentially the end of legacy media. And it was like a 8-year process, right? And they censored us in the beginning and they said social media is misinformation and all that stuff. And then we reached this like critical mass, and it's almost as if it happened overnight, where the vast majority of people were now consuming their news and information using social media rather than legacy media. And I think we're going through that process with Bitcoin. And I think one day we're going to reach a critical mass where people are saying like, that you look at your left, you look at your right, and the vast majority of people are using Bitcoin. They're not using fiat currencies. I think we're going through that process, and I think it's going to roll out a lot quicker than people anticipate. It's good to be back. Anyways, shout out to the 3,200 of you guys watching live between YouTube and X. And of course, shout out to the almost 500 of you guys watching live on Rumble. If you guys are enjoying the show so far, you guys are listening to Simply Bitcoin Live, make sure to smash that like button. Anyways, Opti, what's going on here, bro? I mean, you're more in the know. I mean, we did change the name of that segment to the culture segment because Opti's in the house in the co-host seat. What is the cultural significance of Shane McGillis? Is that his name? Shane Gillis. Talking about that. Also, shout out to Marty Bent for orange pilling him.
Yeah, seriously.
Opti, what's your take?
Well, first of all, I do want to comment on the fact that Nico literally lives in a cocoon. He like doesn't know anything culturally outside of Bitcoin. When it comes to Bitcoin and politics, Nico's all over it. When it comes to just like what's going on in the popular culture, it's usually me and Sophie that are like nerding out about that stuff. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think it's hilarious. And it's actually kind of amazing. You don't know who Shane Gillis is. So Shane Gillis right now is kind of like,
I've seen his videos.
Yeah,
he's the one that copies Trump and like mimics Trump.
He does amazing.
He's effing hilarious.
That Kill Tony episode was amazing. But for the people that don't know Shane Gillis, he's kind of one of these bro comedians right now. He's kind of the hot flavor right now. He's hilarious. He does a lot of good work. I think he's great. He's kind of on the cutting edge right now of testing the waters and saying maybe a little more edgy comedy than has normally, or rather for the last couple of years, been kind of the prevalent culture. So he's one of these like bro comedians right now. And he's just hilarious. And so personally, I did play a clip for you guys last week, I believe it is. Again, all these episodes are just blurring into one. And it was Vivek Ramaswamy on Aiden Ross. And again, Aiden Ross is the biggest streamer in the world. And so you're seeing a trend going on right now where it's not just Bitcoin content creators that are talking about Bitcoin. You're seeing the Bitcoin conversation start to rear its head in mainstream content, whether it's on, the corporate press, on the news channels, you see the Bitcoin tickers, whether it's being talked about in movies or in popular culture. We're getting to this point now, and I think it has to do with Bitcoin being around 100K, in the six figures. And as it starts running, I think this is going to accelerate where more people that aren't necessarily Bitcoiners are going to be talking about Bitcoin. And then also, let's not forget about the whole meme coin rage going on right now on like TikTok and Instagram. There's a lot of reels about young kids going into meme coin. So it is becoming a trend that we're seeing, a new theme going on, where Bitcoin isn't just being relegated to Bitcoin nerds or, internet nerd money. It's starting to become legitimized. And I think that has a lot to do with essentially, Trump talking about a U.S. strategic Bitcoin reserve. Politics has landed on our door. The institutions are here. Institutional capital is finally being able to get into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's at six figures. So there's a lot of factors going in right now that are making people kind of turn their heads and talk about Bitcoin. And I think as more of these conversations happen, you're going to see more people get interested in Bitcoin. But I do think that this little clip we saw is a perfect zeitgeist of the popular culture right now. No one understands what Bitcoin is. I'm convinced most people have heard about Bitcoin, but they don't really care or don't understand what is going on. And so you're seeing that these conversations are happening, but they all kind of happen in a similar way where they're like, yeah, I don't even know what it is. Like, I have no idea what this is. And you're going to see more of that. And I don't necessarily even think that is a bad idea or a bad thing. I just think that a lot of people aren't going to really care about Bitcoin like we care. And I don't think they necessarily have to. I don't think they have to be obsessed with Bitcoin, understand all the technicals. As Bitcoin starts to saturate popular culture, it's just going to be ubiquitous with the modern world. It's like, remember, iPhone's only been out since what, like 2010, 2012? We all live with iPhones, you know, like Uber, Airbnb, DoorDash, all of this stuff. Even YouTube is not that old. Like, we are still kind of in like the maturing age of social media and this internet culture. And so in this beginning portion of understanding Bitcoin, it was like our duty to fully break down Bitcoin, totally understand Bitcoin, dismantle the FUD around Bitcoin, because we needed to kind of have that peace of mind that, oh, hey, you know, I put all my net worth in this internet nerd coin. Am I going to lose it all? And now you're getting to a point where, as it goes into popular culture, I don't think people need to understand all the technicals. All they're going to need to know is essentially that iPhone moment for Bitcoin is having a wallet that has all of the first principles of Bitcoin, you know, maybe super easily connected to a node, doesn't have to understand about any of the back end stuff, maybe has some privacy features in it. And I think this is how we accelerate Bitcoin, is just people using it, not having to understand any of the back end. They're just like, yeah, I put my money in Bitcoin. It goes up in value. You know, it makes my life easier. I finally have savings. This is how we take over the culture. But it starts with, you know, funny guys like Shane Gillis being like, yeah, I don't understand Bitcoin. And he's like, it's the most revolutionary technology in the world. And he's like, yeah, see, I can do that. I understand that much. So it's just very interesting times, to say the least. But anyways, John, what's your thought? Actually, first question, do you know who Shane Gillis is? And then what's your thoughts on it going mainstream?
Yeah, I've heard of Shane Gillis, but I actually am not super familiar with his comedy. So I probably will have to check it out. I think I've seen him once or twice, but not super familiar. So, but listen, I'm also a 50-year-old Gen Xer, so you know I'm not super. I'm probably more like Nico. You know, I'm probably more aligned with like the politics and you know the financial stuff of Bitcoin and less of the cultural stuff. So no, I'm not super familiar with him.
Got it. Okay. So next question though, on top of that, the idea of Bitcoin going mainstream, you were telling me before the show, you've been in Bitcoin since 2016. Are you starting to feel that trend? Like what is your thinking around Bitcoin in the cultural zeitgeist at the moment?
Yeah, no, like 100%. I feel that, but I also saw someone commented this, which is kind of my, you know, right in line with my same thoughts here, kind of reading the comments on the side as they come up. But like, you know, ultimately, like, man, I'm a little scared about going too fast here. And it's like, all of a sudden your average, you know, your plebs can't get involved anymore, or they think they can't get involved anymore, right? Because they're going to have that unit bias and they're going to go like, what's you know 0.001 Bitcoin going to do for me, you know? So it's, you know, that's the scary part as we kind of get sucked up into this, you know, the governments and corporations kind of getting more involved and sucking up all the Bitcoin from your average individual person who, you know, ultimately, like, really, we want more individual, like, we want, of course, we all want number go up, but we also want people to be able to be sovereign individuals, right? Like, that's almost as important as number go up. So we might be giving up some of that to get a bigger number go up, which everyone's going to be happy about. But at the same time, you know, like there's some downside to that. Like there's pros and cons to every single thing in life. There's very few things that are all pro or all con. So mainstream adoption is great. We want it to happen, but we also want to be careful that, you know, everyone gets in, everyone who wants to become a sovereign individual has a chance to do that.
Totally. And I mean, even that idea of sovereign individual, like, I don't think many people are even familiar with what that term means. Obviously, in the Bitcoin space, it's one of the bigger memes in our culture, and we understand the importance of it. But for the average people, I don't think they really even understand what is actually going on and the stakes of everything going on in the world. And actually, I do have one more question here for you. You were talking about the 0.1, you know, what can 0.1 Bitcoin do for me? You've been in Bitcoin for a while. Obviously, we've been around the block for a little bit. I think now it's your 9th year. It's my 8th year. It's like, it's so crazy how fast time flies. But the idea of unit bias, I think we're seeing that kind of play out right now. And we're going to, I think as we kind of continue to etch up in this 6-figure range, I think it's going to be very important to kind of separate this unit bias. Now, I really like the framing of it's not 100K Bitcoin, it's, 0.1 million Bitcoin, and that unit bias kicks in. So what's your thoughts on unit bias playing out in the masses' minds right now?
Yeah, no, I mean, to be fair, I mean, like my wife is like measuring her balance on Cash App and Sats now, right? Because that's an option. You can designate Bitcoin or Sats on there. And I think, the more we designate in Sats, because that's realistically where we're going, the better the unit bias issue is going to be for your average individual, right? Because I mean, your average individual, it isn't going to be able to like lump sum 5 Bitcoins now, right? Like those days are gone, right? In 2017, you could lump sum 5 Bitcoins. Like my very first purchase at $600 was, I think, 4 Bitcoins or 6 Bitcoins. I can't even remember. So, I mean, like, and that wasn't very much money. Like $2,500 in 2016 was, what, $4,000 now approximately, right? So like, ultimately, like people aren't lump summing into multiple coins at one time. So we have to start designating in Sats, because it's scary to think like, oh, I'm going to dump 50 grand into this asset and I'm not even going to have one full unit of it. I mean, I think most people, like, especially older Americans and older people are going to have a hard time with that concept. So like thinking of it in terms of Sats is a lot easier for your average person.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is why I always kind of joke that for a single dollar, actually, I've been kind of getting some heat for this, because I kind of like the idea of changing Sats to Bitcoin and just being like, yeah, you can get 1,000 Bitcoin for $1. Like really flipping the unit bias on people's heads, because but really, even if you get down into the math, I forget what it is, but every millionaire in the world can't even own 1 Bitcoin. And I saw this other statistic the other day, or another breakdown of the numbers, and I'm blanking on what it is, but the amount of Bitcoin that you actually need to acquire to essentially, I guess, distribute the wealth around the world is like, it's a lot smaller than a lot of people think. And man, it really is crazy how little Bitcoin we might actually need in the future to actually live a good life, considering where we all think this is going. I was watching some content this morning and people are saying my bull case is 1.1 million this cycle. And I'm like, look, I'm a bull tard as much as anyone else, but that seems like a bit of a stretch right now. So I don't know. It's really impressive, I think, how fast Bitcoin is coming. And I mean, you've been in it a little longer than me. So actually, someone in the chat said something kind of interesting. Let me see if I can find this real quick. It said something on the lines of, I've been in Bitcoin for, where'd it go? Man, I'm blanking. Someone was saying, like, if you would have told me a couple of years ago how fast things are, he said something, I don't think there's such thing as moving too fast in Bitcoin. If you had asked me, a couple of years ago, all the things are happening, would that happen? I wouldn't have believed you. So what's your thoughts on this? Are you in that same rabbit hole, or are you kind of more where I'm thinking, where like I want to see a slower adoption of Bitcoin, because a fast adoption just really means the system is messed up and a lot of people are in pain. You need to adopt Bitcoin by necessity. So what's your thoughts on that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, well, just try to put yourself in the mindset of I mean, I think we probably all think about these things, but what happens if Bitcoin number goes up super fast, or purchasing power goes up super fast relative to Bitcoin? Like you said, that kind of means things are super messed up for everyone else. So then that becomes like, how safe really are we from all these no coiners, right? If number goes up super fast or purchasing power goes up super fast, then we become like instantaneously so I mean, I think number go up slower is better, or purchasing power go up slower is better than I mean, of course we all want to feel like the generational wealth from it, but also we want to live in a world where everybody else isn't hurting around us. Like if number go up or purchasing power go up super fast, that means everyone else is hurting super bad, and we're the people with all the wealth, and then we become targets, and so that might not be so great. People need to think again of not just the pros of that, but also the cons of that. So and to be fair, I agree with you. I mean, or your buddy who says 1.1. I mean, I think we could go super fast. I don't think that may not necessarily be what I want, but I think it's a possibility.
Yeah, I forget who's been saying it, but there's definitely a growing trend right now of saying where we are right now might just be Bitcoin boring us to death with just like, it's not going to have a parabolic run. I don't think that this is happening, but people are kind of speculating that maybe 2026 isn't going to be the bear market we think it is. And it's just going to be like a boring, wait, this is the funny part. It's just going to be like a boring, 2-3x, and then it's going to go sideways, and then it's going to continue to pump, 100%. And we might not be seeing these parabolic runs anymore. So hopefully we got one more in us, but I would like to see a little dampened bear market. I'm not against that. That sounds kind of fun.
Yeah, no, I just want to feel like I just want to feel like society is in a good place. I mean, ultimately, like at the end of the day, right? Like we've talked a little bit about this before we went live, but like at the end of the day, like, I don't want to just be like super wealthy in a world where most people, are struggling, because, it's you want to see abundance for as many people as possible. I'm a huge Jeff Booth fan. So, I try to kind of envision things in a positive, potentially way where things just become more abundant for us, and society benefits as a whole, instead of just like it's great. Like, yes, were we smart enough, or were we, innovative enough to kind of figure this out before a lot of people? Sure, of course. And so is anyone else who's in Bitcoin right now, as opposed to people who are no coiners right now. But like at the end of the day, like we should also care about the rest of the world, because if the rest of the world's blowing up around us, it doesn't do us any good to be, in a place, in an elevated place above those people financially,
Totally. Couldn't agree more. All right, guys. Well, apparently Nico's internet is completely dead. So we're rolling with the punches, and I will wrap up the show. But here we go. Let's get into the news, guys.
I want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, Compass Mining. They make Bitcoin mining accessible to everyone, from beginners to experienced investors. Their turnkey miners gets you online and hashing within 48 hours, making it easier than ever to start your mining journey. Plus, with their active marketplace, you can resell your miner at any time, adding flexibility and value to your investment. Visit their website to access a wealth of resources, learning everything you need to know about Bitcoin mining. Take your first step into the world of Bitcoin mining with confidence. Discover more at compassmining.io. Again, compassmining.io, and see how Compass Mining can power your success. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Foundation. It's self-custody done right. They built a premium grade hardware wallet called Passport right here in the US, and it integrates seamlessly with their free app called Envoy. Passport is fully open source and verifiable. It's the most intuitive Bitcoin wallet design with a UX reminiscent of a classic feature phone, so you'll know how to navigate it and use it the moment you pick it up. It's also air-gapped, meaning Bitcoin stays offline, never touching an internet connection. It's Bitcoin only, open source verifiable, air-gap security model, gorgeous design craft, premium grade materials. Get your Bitcoin off exchanges and into your own hands in just a few minutes with Passport at foundation.xyz/simply. Get peace of mind.
All right, guys, make sure you scan the QR code and get yourself a Passport by Foundation. You should not have your Bitcoin on exchanges. Literally, do not leave your Bitcoin on exchanges. If you don't take it into custody, I would say it's not your Bitcoin, not your keys, not your cheese. And if you pair this with the Envoy app, I think it's one of the best and easiest ways to securely store your Bitcoin. I like to say it is grandma friendly. Okay, so really quickly, I was really hoping Nico's internet wouldn't shut off on me today because he was literally just in El Salvador. So I was saving this topic for Nico to come back, but maybe we'll chime in on it tomorrow. But what am I talking about? We covered this a couple of months ago when the news came out, but now we're getting a little more clarity on what's going on. And here we have a headline. It is El Salvador walks back its Bitcoin law, but is still investing more in Bitcoin. So this dropped yesterday. I think an interesting development. Let's cover this article. So 4 years after becoming the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, El Salvador is taking a step back. The Legislative Assembly has approved changes to the country's Bitcoin law, effectively removing Bitcoin status as legal currency. On January 29th, the Assembly, controlled by President Nayib Bukele's New Ideas Party, passed this legislation with a 55-2 vote. 6 articles of the Bitcoin law were modified and 3 others were repealed. Under the new rules, Bitcoin is no longer considered currency, though it remains legal tender. Another change makes using Bitcoin entirely voluntary. Previously, the law mandated that businesses accept Bitcoin for any goods or services they provided. Additionally, Bitcoin can no longer be used to pay taxes or settle government debts. The government is also stepping back from its involvement in Chivo Wallet, the state-backed digital wallet. The changes are expected to take effect 90 days after this publication, so 89 days from today in the official Gazette, which is likely to happen in the next few days. The reforms comes as part of a broader financial agreement between Bukele and the IMF, and one of the conditions for a proposed $1.4 billion extended fund facility loan was that El Salvador mitigate potential risk of the Bitcoin project. So interesting. That's basically, the breakdown of it. On the one hand, it does seem kind of like an L. Like I'm not going to lie. It was a little bit disappointing that basically the legal tender status for Bitcoin in El Salvador has to kind of get pulled back. But the voluntary part of this does kind of make me feel that it's almost like a good thing because Bitcoin is voluntary. It's permissionless. This is the whole beauty of Bitcoin, is that no one is forcing you to use Bitcoin. It is basically being used in a peer-to-peer manner on a voluntary basis. So there's some things here that I think kind of do align better with Bitcoin ethos. And then the other parts are, I don't want to say this because I really like El Salvador. I really like Nayib Bukele, but it does almost feel like, and the more cynical Bitcoiners have been saying this, it did almost feel like the whole Bitcoin law was a PR stunt at some point. I don't want to say that, but I'm just relaying what people are saying. But as I said, when this news came out, I think it's a lot bigger than just Bitcoiners. Obviously, Bitcoiners, all of us, we think we're the sun in the solar system, everything revolves around us. But there's a lot of people in his country that aren't Bitcoiners. And this $1 billion investment from the IMF is obviously going to be doing a lot of things for the infrastructure, though. It is kind of feeling like a, economic hitman book, if you guys understand what the IMF is and all that stuff. It does seem like maybe Nayib bent the knee to the IMF. Obviously, the IMF has a big issue with Bitcoin, the adoption of Bitcoin. They've been fighting Bitcoin at every turn. But the crazy part about this story is if you read the report, the press release about this, they basically said that they wanted to minimize their investment into Bitcoin. Now, there was a little bit of uncertainty on Twitter around this because everyone knows that the El Salvador's reserves in Bitcoin are being tracked. It is all public, but there was a couple of days where it looked like El Salvador had stopped buying Bitcoin around when this law was kind of being talked about. I think they stopped it for about 4 or 5 days, and then they came back and bought 5 Bitcoin in one bulk order. And then it seemed like they might have taken a few days off after that. And then yesterday, was this yesterday? Yeah, yesterday, they came back and just added 11 Bitcoins to their reserve. And you see Nayib Bukele, with the eyes emojis. And here's the holdings for their official El Salvador reserves. So it looks like maybe they're pulling back on it actually being implemented, some would argue by state force here, where you are forced to use Bitcoin. Now it's becoming voluntary. It still does look like Bitcoin is legal tender status there. It's just, you can kind of break down the semantics of what that actually means. But it does seem like they are still obviously super invested in Bitcoin. Nayib Bukele, I think, is a Bitcoiner still. It's not like he's scrapping that just to bend the knee to the IMF. But it is very interesting that we did see this change for an IMF loan, though they are still doubling down on buying a lot of Bitcoin. So it's I think it's a very interesting story. Now, I wish Nico was here so we could talk about this. He was literally just down there. But hey, this is the recent development going on in El Salvador. Very interesting to say the least, at least from our perspective as Bitcoiners. Now, I've been seeing even like Dr. Jack Cruz saying that El Salvador is no longer just Bitcoin country, though Stacy and Max Kaiser are arguing the opposite, that it's still Bitcoin country, it's still freedom country. So they're still, I think, in the history books, will consider the first country to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender status. Obviously, there's some semantics and maybe some legal workarounds that we're seeing play out right now. So this is where we are. On the one hand, as kind of more of a libertarian voluntarist here, I think Bitcoin should be voluntary, to be very blunt about it. So I'm not really too upset about this move, but it does seem like he is kind of walking back that Bitcoin status right now. But again, Bitcoiners aren't the only thing in the world. And I think that $1 billion loan from the IMF, though we don't really know what all of the strings attached to it will actually encounter or what they actually mean, it does seem like obviously the IMF still has a huge chip on its shoulder in regards to Bitcoin, because we know if Bitcoin gets adopted in a lot of these, southern country, the global south, then the IMF's control on the world stage is going to minimize. And so it's obviously, this is where I start to kind of go down. This is why we know Bitcoin is super important. When a group like the IMF, literally the stipulation is, hey, you got to pull back on your Bitcoin investments. That's the stuff that makes me see red flags. And I'm like, okay, this just means that we are winning. El Salvador is obviously doing a lot better than it was 4 years ago when they announced this. So very interesting developments we have here. But John, you're throwing the Bitcoin Medellin conference in Colombia. So, and you were telling me before the show that you think, the global south adopting Bitcoin is going to be a huge thing. So what's your thoughts on seeing El Salvador seemingly pull back its Bitcoin law?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it sucks. I mean, let's be realistic. So, because, it's just such positive, PR for the Bitcoin community that this is like Bitcoin country. And now they're like going backwards. I think it's kind of depressing for Bitcoiners, really on one hand. And then on the other hand, you're like, okay, that's great, because Bitcoin is, again, going back, Bitcoin is like a sovereign individual thing. Like, do we really want companies and corporations and countries, do we want them to really have it, or do we want it to be in the hands of the pleb? So, I think it's like, again, double-edged sword here, it sucks that, they dumped us, right? That El Salvador dumped the Bitcoin. But, you could still go to El Salvador and there's plenty of people still accepting Bitcoin, grocery stores still accepting it. I saw a bunch of the people that were down there for Plan B, and, so the people are still accepting it. And it's, I don't think that's going to go away. And I think there is a good chance that, that it comes back, but I do think it sucks right now that they dumped us. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is kind of the common sentiment, though it seems like they might have accelerated their buying of Bitcoin to their reserves. And I'm pretty sure that was one of the stipulations where they have to kind of pull back on it. So, I mean, I don't like to predict or mind read here, but, the being a kind of more less cynical about it, maybe this is a 5D chess move and we're just not privy to all the details here. But it does seem like ever since this announcement happened where they were supposed to pull back on their Bitcoin buys, they're just doubling down and they're buying more Bitcoin than they ever were before. So on the one hand, it seems like they are accelerating their Bitcoin reserves. And on the other hand, it's obviously not being enforced anymore as a mandatory effect here, or mandatory law in El Salvador. So I think there is it's not black and white, I would say, but yeah, I would agree with you, John. It does seem, it does suck. We'll leave it at that one, but let's get into, speaking of the global south, our boy John just threw a conference, the first conference in Medellin, the Bitcoin Medellin conference. So we're going to talk about all that going on right now. Let's get into it.
I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, HIVE Digital Technologies. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's been battle tested through every possible market. And as the first with an AI strategy, HIVE continues to redefine the future of sustainable energy. Also, gotta casually drop this in here. HIVE consistently tops the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're changing the game. Learn more by following them at HIVE Digital Tech or check out their website, hivedigitaltech.com.
All right, guys, last plug for you guys. I know you're yelling at me, but make sure you guys get to BitBlockBoom April 3rd to April 6th in Dallas. This is our home conference. We love this conference. This is literally where Simply Bitcoin was spawned from. This is how we created the show in the first place. A true Bitcoin conference. It's small so that you can interact with a lot of Bitcoiners. It is really a pleb-led conference. It's all the cool people end up in Dallas for BitBlockBoom. It's a lot of people's favorite conference, and of course you need to get to Dallas. You need to eat some really good barbecue, guys. This is the best barbecue in the world. I am a little biased here. This is my home conference, literally and figuratively. Anyways, let's get into talking about Bitcoin Medellin. So John, thank you so much for coming here. I'll pull up the website real quick and let's talk about it. So I know this is your first conference, so maybe let's just start with, why did you do the Bitcoin Medellin conference for the first year? And maybe you can let some people know just how stressful it is to throw on events in the first place.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I've been running events since like 2000. I coached college basketball for 15, 20 years. And then after coaching college basketball, or in conjunction, was running a bunch of youth basketball events all over the country. And, started trying to drag my wife and turn her into a Bitcoin or two, brought her to Bitcoin Amsterdam. And there was just so much talk about ordinals and, a bunch of shit coins on Bitcoin. And so again, maybe I'm negatively talking about stuff that people like here, but, I'm kind of a money maximalist. And I just felt like, this sucks, like trying to orange pill my wife, and they're spending all this time talking about ordinals. Like, this is just ridiculous. Bitcoin Magazine is awesome, but, they have some financial incentives that are aligned to promote some of these things and BRC20s and, ordinals and all this bullshit. And so I just said, we need to, I wanted to, again, I'm a huge fan of Jeff Booth. So I wanted to take some of what I did in the fiat world and take some of my personal skills, since I'm not like a developer, I'm not a TradFi person. I want to take some of what my skills were, event planning, and put them into the new system, into the Bitcoin system. So we decided if we ran an event in the United States, we're not going to be able to have that big of an impact on people. There's already people doing it here that are way more prominent than us. So let's go find some place that could benefit from us running an event there. And so we loved Medellin. We've been there a lot, my wife and I, and it's a great place. A lot of digital nomads, a lot of entrepreneurs, lots of people from all over the world have been there. And there's a lot of Bitcoiners there. British Hodl is there a lot. Oliver Velez. I saw some people talk about him in the chat. I actually thought his talk at Bitcoin Medellin was one of the best talks I've ever heard at a Bitcoin conference. And so we just went out there and started planning this thing, and we got it off the ground, thankfully. And like you said, it was really stressful. I mean, of course, 3 weeks, as I was telling you guys before the conference, I mean, we were literally super far financially underwater, and we just kept plugging away at it. And at the end, a bunch, as I've been told for these Bitcoin events, people wait to the absolute last minute to buy tickets. I mean, we were selling, people were walking up and buying tickets at the door, which I was pretty surprised about. So it all went off great. A lot of, BJ Dichter was there. He talked to us. He was very involved in the Canadian truckers thing. And so he told us he thought, it went off like a second or third year event, very organized. We were pretty on time with everything. We did run a little bit behind the second day, like maybe an hour. Everything went really well. It was all broadcast on YouTube and Twitter. And, we had a bunch of pretty big name people there. So I was very pleased with it. And I think it's going to grow even more next year. I mean, Jeff has told us he thinks he might be able to twist some arms of people like Lynn Alden and James Lavish and some of the people that I personally really enjoy. So I ran it like, hey, this is a conference I would personally love to go to. And that's how I tried to structure it. There was no one said shit about ordinals. We didn't talk about that at all. Thank God. That's basically gone away now. So, really, I actually am really optimistic about that.
Love it. Love it. Well, first off, though, could you unpack? Because I mean, I know it. I think most of our audience knows, or the majority of our audience probably understands what you mean by that Jeff Booth meme. But could you explain for maybe some new people that don't understand and what that actually means? So just unpack that Jeff Booth meme a little bit, and then we'll talk about the conference a little more.
Yeah, sure. No, I just think we're all out here farming for fiat dollars, right? Like most of us, and I'm assuming most of your audience too, we're out here farming for fiat dollars to buy more Bitcoin. So, I just think and so we want to do things that promote the new system, because obviously if you're operating in this new system partially, but then you're still operating in the fiat system, it's just so much easier. You can see where things are going a lot easier from inside the new system than fighting against it in the old system. So to me, it was just really important to, again, try to take my skills that I developed throughout, the last 20 years and put them into something that was in the Bitcoin space. And this is what came out of it. So.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So let's just talk about, look, proof of work, first conference. For people that don't know how to throw or put on events, they're always stressful. We've been involved in a lot. So the fact that you did it, and actually I do want to do a shout out. Shout out to our boy Sal. He listens to us all the time. He's helping you do some marketing for Bitcoin Medellin. I'm actually going to go, train with him later today. He's one of our good friends here at Simply Bitcoin. And so I want to give him a special shout out. I know he's working with you, and he was telling me about this conference, and he's like, have you heard of it? And I was like, no, I didn't even know. There's so many conferences, first and foremost, that I didn't hear about it. And he's like, yeah, it's the first year. It seems like it's going to go off without a hitch. And it did. And that proof of work of doing your first conference, and the fact that you threw it, and what Oliver was saying, that it looked like it was a second or third year conference, probably because of your other talents outside of Bitcoin. So kudos to you. But let's talk about this year a little bit, Bitcoin Medellin, where it was and how it went down. And then we'll talk about it for next year. We'll start to plant the seeds for the next conference. I'm guessing there's going to be a next one.
Yeah, no, that's the plan. I mean, I think we can only just continue to grow this thing in Medellin. And, we had one of the things that we tried to do this year was make it a little cheaper for people who are South American natives and or residents. And so next year we're going to try to do even more in terms of making it affordable. I think next year what we're going to try to do is for Colombians living in Colombia, we're going to make it $25 for a ticket next year, 25 US. So just to make it so that we just want them to come. I think education is so important, and so we're going to do everything we can to help them out. And, now that we've got this thing up and running, I think there's a lot of people who, just were like, hey, we've never heard of these people before. I'm not going to fly all the way down to Colombia and, take a chance to see if this thing really happens or not. But now that, like you said, now that we have proof of work, I think there's this thing is just going to explode.
Yeah, no, awesome. And also, I see a lot of friends on this list. Now I'm kind of getting the FOMO here. I'm like, man, I should have gone down there. I have a bunch of buddies on this list as speakers. This sounds awesome. Actually, keep going.
No, it was really incredible. The speakers were incredible. A lot of big name people took a chance on us, which was great. And just to give you my background, like in terms of like running events, like, so when we run these basketball events, like the first thing is to go like get like whatever the best facility you can get in, like the first class facility that's beautiful and whatever. And then the second biggest thing is like go get some big name teams that other people want to play against or know that will draw college coaches. Therefore, that'll help. There'll be more college coaches at the event to recruit their players. So for this, we kind of did the same format. Like I went and found the like nicest conference center in Medellin, and then went and, you know, talked to Jeff Booth and basically said like, hey, like what'll it take? Like whatever it takes, we're going to do it. And so once we got him on board, it was like some of your friends that were speakers, we just went to them and said like, hey, we got Jeff on board. Like he's 100% doing this. And like, you know, essentially, and then that's how we started getting a bunch of other really good speakers to come do it. So, you know, thankfully they took a chance on us and here we are.
Love it. Love it. Okay. Now for the elephant in the room and the seeming theme in the chat right now is the safety concerns about being in Colombia. We were talking about this earlier and you're like, no, it was great. We had no hiccups. So for people maybe on the fence of going down to Colombia and going to a Bitcoin conference, what would be your elevator pitch on that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I spent a lot of time in New York City, and I live here in Jacksonville, Florida, which is pretty hood. Like, you know, when you're in these cities, you don't drive in the hood and get out of your car and walk around at night. Like, I mean, like you're doing the same thing in Medellin. Like the conference is in the daytime. You know, it's you know, you're coming to a major conference center in a major city. Like, you know, there's security there. You know, yeah, I mean, someone said U.S. is more dangerous. Like. It probably is. I mean, like this isn't you know, we're not talking about, you know, Pablo Escobar's Colombia, you know, I mean, this is like 2016, like just mind your own business and like, you know, like don't come down there. Like, I mean, you know, like, look, I mean, I didn't wear my necklace down there, you know, like I didn't run around with a bunch of Bitcoin stuff on, you know, like just use common sense. Like, I think people, you know, forget to use common sense a lot. Like, don't come down there and like, you know, have your hardware wallet, you know, on a necklace around your neck. Like, I mean, don't be an idiot and you'll be fine.
Love it. Love it. Okay. There is one other thing before you know, we can plug next year's and what you have in the works. But I know before the show, and we didn't really touch on this, is this idea of just how important you think Bitcoin will be for the global South. And considering we did touch on El Salvador today, I think we should, you know, get a little rant out of you on that one. How important do you think that Bitcoin will be for the global South, and basically why you're doing the conference down there and what your efforts are to ensure that more people get on the Bitcoin standard?
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate the opportunity to say it. Like one of your viewers here in the chat called me a socialist. So that's
yeah,
that's pretty funny because listen, look, I mean, I want other people to be okay, but if they're too stupid to be okay, I can't fix that either. But like, we have to give people an opportunity and educate them, and then they have to personally take action themselves. Like, I can't take action for other people. If I was a socialist, I'd be like, hey, listen, let me share all my Bitcoin with people. Like, I mean, like, sorry guys, I'm not sharing with you. Like, you have to make your own decision. But knowing what I know, I feel in a moral obligation to try to educate other people and get people on board so that they don't have to get hurt in the process of all their, you know, of all the fiat dilution that there is out there. And you know, like I just want to live my life and try to be a good person. I think, like, to me, that's like the most important thing is like, try to be a good person, try to help other people. But if they don't get it and they're too stupid to get on board, like, I can't do anything about that. But, you know, what I can do is do my part in trying to relay this message to more people. And I think, like, I don't need to relay it to more people in America. There's plenty of people doing that already as an American, but like, I can go other places where I think they might need it and try to spread the message, even if I'm not a native Colombian, or even if I'm just some gringo from up here in the US, like, who cares? I can still go try to help other people. And I think life is all about, like, I get the most satisfaction in life when I'm helping other people. So, you know, I just try to do what makes me feel good. And if that makes me a socialist, I guess, but I really don't. I think I'm a pretty big capitalist as an entrepreneur. So I'm not like, you know, like, okay, dude.
Well, John, I usually do the warning before the show that our chat is considered the troll box, but I completely blanked on it today. So I guess a little late to warn you about the troll box, but yes, that is our duty.
It's cool. It's all good. No, it's
awesome.
all in fun. And listen, I love when I get to be an anonymous person. We can take shots at other people for stupid shit they say or whatever. But I definitely want to clear that up. Trust me, I'm not a fishness. I care about other people, and at the end of the day, I want to help as many people as I can, and but I also can't control people in their decisions. So.
Yeah, no, totally. We were joking last week that, man, if we weren't the Bitcoiners we were, it would be nice to force people to adopt Bitcoin, but we're voluntarists here. We're like, hey, this is a voluntary protocol. And obviously, I think to your credit and what you're saying, I really do believe it's our duty to continue to educate as many people as possible, considering what we think might be on the horizon, especially if the fiat system is looking like it's, wobbling, it's cracking. I think it's every Bitcoiner's duty to continue to try to spread the Bitcoin message. And obviously everyone will play their part. It doesn't necessarily have to be your duty, particularly like you guys watching this. But I think as a Bitcoiner, we should be trying, and I hate to use should have, could have, would haves in all this, but I think it's important for us to continue to try to educate our friends and family and do our part to make sure that more people do get on the Bitcoin safety boat or the exit route or whatever you want to talk about it. Like, Bitcoin is the solution to the modern world's problems. People are getting poorer. People are having hard times in the traditional financial system, and continuing to educate people and showing them that there is an alternative. I think it's one of the most important things to be doing. Hence why we do this show. Is obviously it's become our business, but we also truly believe in the message of spreading Bitcoin to as many people as possible. And it's not just about institutional capital getting into Bitcoin or nation state adoptions of Bitcoin or governments, etc. It's about retail. It's about individuals learning that there is a better system, there is a better way to store your value, and that is, of course, Bitcoin. As the meme goes, fix the money, fix the world. So, John, kudos to you. Now, before we wrap up the show, let's talk about what your plans are for, I'm guessing, next year, or, what do you have in the roadmap for people? I think these are tickets still for this last one. So
that was last year. Yeah.
Okay. So
still working on getting the dates announced for 2026. We're hoping the same, essentially the same weekend or right around the same time frame. I mean, of course, it wouldn't be good for us to compete with Plan B in El Salvador, or I don't know, adopting in El Salvador. So we want to kind of make sure we stay on a weekend that's different from other people. And in terms of what else is in the works, now that we kind of have proof of work here, I've actually been asked by Maya in Suriname to come help them with theirs a little bit. And I'm going to meet with them tomorrow, actually, about helping them on their second one. And then also potentially working on one that may happen in Costa Rica with another group as well. So, I think, of course, those won't be mine. I'll be helping other people, but, more than happy to help people plan their conferences and promote it and get things right here. So, I think the more we can get these things up and going and people can educate the people in their communities, because let's be realistic, Suriname, Maya's doing an unbelievably good job there, but there's probably a lot of people beside, who can benefit from this. And, it's not like a lot of people in Suriname probably have the resources they're not traveling to the US to conferences. So we have to go to where the people are,
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so glad you put it that way, because, our friends over on the Rumble every single day, they're literally in the chat right now kind of trolling us, is this is why we feel YouTube is a necessary evil at this point. Is we love YouTube. We're huge fans of YouTube. We still use YouTube in our personal lives, but that's the main idea. Go where people are so that they can get the Bitcoin message. And, that's why we try to maintain our YouTube channel, fingers crossed, and we're here so that we can get more people to understand Bitcoin, and that is the goal. So the whole goal is try to get as many people to question the fiat system, understand what Bitcoin is, understand there's a better way. And so kudos to you, John, for basically doing the same thing, living the Jeff Booth message where, hey, unplug from the fiat system, put all your energy into the Bitcoin system. And it kind of reminds me of, what's that one saying? Like, the more you fight bullshit, like it takes twice as much energy to combat the bullshit than it is to create the bullshit. And so that's part of the idea. Unplug from the fiat system and put as much of your mental energies and your time and even your capital into Bitcoin and continue to further the Bitcoin network and the Bitcoin worldview. And so kudos to you. Now, last question before we wrap it up, John. I do this usually for our guests. It is just like the final tee off. What is the final message you want to leave with the audience? It could be about Bitcoin, it could be about the conference, whatever the final message you want to get out to the audience. Now is the time. So, John, the stage is yours.
Yeah, no, the biggest thing I would say is, just keep going. Like, even though I think you get to a point, like I think I heard American Hodl say this, like get to a point where it's really hard to move the needle on your own stack. After a cycle or two, just keep going, just keep stacking. So that's the biggest message I would say to the people who are already in here, the plebs are already in here, just keep stacking. Ted, really appreciate you coming, man.
Awesome, John. Well, really appreciate it. For the audio listeners out there, if you are interested in going down to Medellin next year, go to bitcoinmedellin.com. Or John, what's your Twitter account? And we can plug that right now for everyone. And then let's wrap up today's show.
Yeah, the Twitter account is BTC Medellin CONF. So a little bit of abbreviations in there, but essentially like Bitcoin Medellin Conference. So if you look us up, pretty easy to find on Twitter.
Love it, man. Well, super excited to see where the Medellin conference grows to. And again, one other special shout out to our boy Sal. I know he's going to be listening to this in the podcast audio version. So we love you, Sal. And, he was a part of your team this year. And I know he's super excited about continuing to grow this conference with you. So
yeah, no, it was great to have him involved. I mean, obviously he's kind of a behind the scenes guy, but I think he's pretty well known, and we love having him on board.
Awesome, man. Well, John, really appreciate you coming on today. I'm going to pull you behind the scenes for a moment. Stick around for a couple seconds while I wrap up today's show.
Great.
All righty then, guys. Well, we did it, even with the technical issues. Guys, I don't know what's going on here. It's our software is acting up. Everything's acting up on us, but the show goes on nonetheless. As you guys know, we will be here, rain or shine, Monday through Friday at roughly 12:15 p.m. I know you can yell at me all you want. Hold your tomatoes. You already know we're always like 5 minutes late. That's just part of the plan here. So love you guys. Really appreciate you guys. Get outside, touch some grass, eat some good food, stack some sats, because it looks like once we break out of that 100K range, I think the game might be on. So, man, we really appreciate all you guys. And for all the new viewers, if you appreciate what we're doing here, you think we're providing you value, of course, smash the like button, comment on the show, and most importantly, hit the subscriber button. We will be back tomorrow. On that note, guys, it's your boy Opti, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.